Hello, everybody, and welcome into Region Football Weekly. I'm Chris Ramirez. I got the sports director himself, the one and only Duke, Mike DeWan, with me. Zach Miller is handling the controls. We are live in the Centier Bank studios here. Thank you for joining us on the Week 3 edition. Mike, the season flies by. At the end of this week, we'll be one-third of the way through the regular season.
It's crazy. Time flies by when we're having fun, they say. And, yeah, it's been a lot of great football so far. But, yeah, just like that, going into Week 3 conference play, just, it's here for some of these bigger conferences. We're getting right into it, and we got some great games this week.
Yeah, we sure do. We had a bunch of great games last week, too. Let's take a look at some of them. We'll start with one of the biggest surprises of the season so far, the Portage Indians. How much of a surprise? It was a surprise they were able to beat Morton, who came in ranked number 5, and Portage hadn't won last year.
Right.
But they got to Northwood. Northwood's got a good football program. And they get down 16-0, I believe it was, at the half. And found a way to come back on the road against a good football team, and they got it done 19-16.
Yeah, Northwood was a team that was playing for a state championship last year. They took the trip to Lucas Oil, unfortunately came up short, but this was a team that I believe Northwood won by, I want to say, 40-plus points last year. Again, a Portage team in their first season. As we mentioned, that there is a lot to kind of iron out with Coach Richards and those players, and I was kind of thinking about this on the way here, being down 16-0 at the half, and you were previously an 0-10 team. You kind of look at that deficit, and you're like, okay, we've been here before.
We know what's going to happen.
The culture, it's tough to kind of rebuild and be like, okay, we got a chance, because we've been in this position before where, hey, most of those 10 games they played last year, they were probably down at half, and I'd like to say the majority of them, if not all. So you kind of look at that and see, this might be another one. Okay, Northwood's got the best of us. We may try and go out there, have a prideful second half, but we're going to chalk this one up. We're going to move on to the conference play. But Portage, again, this is a different team this year. Coach Roy Richards has his guys right, and that's truly impressive. They did it on the defensive side. From what I saw, they hold Northwood to, they had a couple red zone trips, but they hold them to 3 field goals at the end of the first half. That score could have been so much different at halftime, and Northwood, if they would have capitalized, but Portage hung in there, and they got some guys over there, quarterback Cody Young, Ogbonna Williamson Jr., he had 10 catches for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had a kickoff return for a touchdown against Morton, and then Jamari Duff had the game-winning touchdown. But Portage, yeah, they're for real. First 2-0 start since 2008. I mean, that's pretty hard to believe, but this is obviously a special team, and they're going to hopefully show us again this week.
All I can say is it feels like deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
This is Roy Richards being Roy Richards. We've seen this before in a very similar situation at Morton High School, and now we're seeing it start to happen at Portage. And those what it is, it's belief in Roy Richards. He finds a way to get the kids involved and to believe in what they're doing, and that's what's happening here. I've spoke to him, and he's told me, yeah, the kids are starting to believe. And that's exactly and you can feel it when you're around Roy Richards.
Right,
anybody around him is going to believe.
Yeah.
And that's what he's got going. So it's going to be real interesting. They got Lake Central coming in this week. Right. We'll talk about that when we get to the preview section. But, Portage right now, a big surprise, maybe the biggest surprise of the season so far.
I'd say so.
All right, let's keep in the Duneland Conference. Valparaiso and Andrean.
That was crazy.
Wow, what a game that was. 21-0. Andrean comes out of the gate looking strong, and we're all kind of scratching our heads saying, okay, maybe the Valparaiso magic, is starting to wear off a little bit. They've been so good, so steady, so consistent for so long. How long can you do it, before these things start happening?
Right.
Well, it's kind of what it looked like maybe. Okay, maybe there's something different going on this year. Then bang, Andrean gets that 21 lead, a kickoff return, sparks Valparaiso right before the half. They come back and win the game 28-21.
Yeah, talk about a scare for Valparaiso and Andrean. We saw kind of that potential that we were kind of hoping to see going into this week, and we know they're going to be a force to reckon within the NCC, but this was a game where, yeah, you mentioned it's our thoughts on Valpo were kind of shifted, almost at the end of the first half, and obviously it takes a lot from that team to claw back from a 21-0 lead of any caliber against any team. That's why Valparaiso is one of our total team efforts this week, because they did it on special teams. Their game-winning touchdown was a pick six, and they did pretty well offensively. We talked about their offense going into that week one against Penn. They scored 42 points, but they did a lot of that through the passing game. This week, not so much. They did it on the ground. Thomas Berta, their fantastic running back over there at Valparaiso, had 178 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Nicholas Fry's a sophomore on that defensive side. We were going to kind of talk about that Valpo defense as well, being relatively young, a lot of new faces, but he was kind of the guy to step up. Again, only a sophomore, but he led the team that game with 12 tackles. And Tice Morris had a game-winning pick 6 with about 3 minutes to go. And yeah, they did it all in 3 phases of the game. Andrean, that's a heartbreaker, but it's not going to be easy. Again, playing Merrillville and then Valparaiso back-to-back, they're going to be a team to look out for, and we're going to see how they respond. That's not an easy pill to swallow, especially against a team like Valparaiso, where if you win that game, momentum is riding high, but both teams, again, you got to shake it off, put it in the rearview mirror, and get ready for their conference play.
Yep, and that's going to kick off this week. Mike, let's move over now and go out to Kankakee Valley and the Wheeler game last week. Kind of started pretty even in this one, but KV was able to pull away for a 2-touchdown lead. You know, you talk about Valpo's vaunted rushing attack, which showed up last Friday. How about Kankakee Valley? I mean, they got a one-man wrecking crew over there with Marco Castro. He's lighting it up. It's like almost like, you know, Kirk Kennedy's back in a time warp. You know what I mean?
That's all you kind of, when you have a player like that, an offensive line that is blocking as well as they are. But Marco Castro, one of his big scores last week against Wheeler was an 88-yard touchdown. That was one of our electrifying plays of the week, and he's just a bull. He broke a couple tackles, and obviously it's not easy to scamper 88 yards. You got to have a little bit of speed, and he showed that as well. But he's the total package, and again, he's the guy that you need in Kirk Kennedy's offense, that pretty run-heavy, and a guy you're expected to carry the ball 25, maybe even 30 times a game. And they got a guy over there with Marco Castro, also Aiden Uchman, excuse me if I'm saying that incorrectly, but the senior wide receiver and DB had 4 catches for 114 yards, a touchdown, also had 2 interceptions on defense. So he was kind of that big part. It was a comeback win for KV. This was a game that they were down at one point, and Wheeler, again, still a good football team who we're going to see tomorrow night, but this was a great game, great win for KV, and again, another team, the NCC, I want to say it's a little bit more wide open this year. Hanover, again, they were kind of a surprise, but we know that they were coming in as talented, but after they lose a little bit of talent to graduation, KV could be a team in the mix, and they're going to have a fun matchup tomorrow.
Yeah, Hanover's going to be the favorite, but there's no guarantee like we saw
Correct.
last year where they were able to roll everybody. I think it is going to be more competitive. But, you know, again, you look at this KV team, ever since Kirk Kennedy got there, anybody who's a region football fan's thinking, get him a running back, get him a running back. You know, nobody, I mean, you know, there's a lot of coaches that are here over time, you know, 30 years, you think, yep, they've had to adapt or change their style. I don't think anybody wants to see Kirk Kennedy change his style. Line a running back up 7 yards behind the center, hand him the football and let him run. And that's kind of what they're doing here and working his magic. And if he can put in place what he had over there at Lowell in Kankakee Valley, that's kind of what everybody's looking for, and the running back is always the centerpiece.
No doubt about it. Our statistical leaderboards are coming out tonight, our powering Indiana peak performers, and spoiler alert if you're seeing this now, but Marco Castro is currently leading the area in rushing yards. He is first with 660, and I think second place is at 360. So they have an absolute beast in the backfield. It seems like he's played 2 or 3 more games than these guys, but he hasn't. He's only played 2 games, but they got an absolute bell cow in there. And again, it takes a total team effort to have a running back perform that well. You got your line's got to block well. You got to have a good passing game too. Sometimes to kind of keep the DBs honest. They're doing a great job over there, and it's going to be a fun one this week.
Quick look at the Wheeler Bearcats, 0-2 for the second straight year. Some people look at that and say, how do you even consider these guys for the top 10? On the other hand, to me, they're a pretty strong 0-2. I don't necessarily think their record is anywhere near an indication of what they're going to do once they get into conference.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we look at last year, again, I put down here, they started 0-3, and they won 6 straight games once conference kind of starts, and we're going to talk about their matchup this week, which they ended up losing last year, but this is a team that, they got off to a rough start. Those non-conference opponents like Hanover Central and KV, it's not easy. You're playing up. If you're Wheeler, again, to mention, they're only, a 2A school, so they're playing up for those non-conference opponents. But, we got a lot of faith in this Wheeler team. I still think so. It's a long season, and again, the GSSC, I still think they're going to be the favorites in their respective division, and they got a pretty solid wide receiver in Tyne Vetical who kind of does it all for that Bearcat team. I think he's at the top of our leaderboard for the receiving yards. He had 6 catches last week for 132 yards, a touchdown, and also had 8 tackles. I believe he also punts for them. He does just about everything. And then Caleb Klimzak, their quarterback, did a little bit better job of protecting the ball this week. That was kind of the point of emphasis from that Hanover game. Still had 2 interceptions, but had 313 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. So, again, it's going to be interesting to see how this team kind of bounces back. Now the games get ever so more important once conference starts.
Yes, they do. Now we'll take a drive over to the Brickyard in Hobart. Merrillville was in last week, and they had no problems whatsoever with the Brickies. Merrillville showing why they're ranked number 1 in Class 5A through the first 2 weeks. They've had a couple of impressive performances, to say the least. What do you want to say with this one? Where do you start with Merrillville?
Yeah, their senior-led O-line. I want to say for the Week 1 game, I believe our crew over there at that Andrean Merrillville game, I believe it was our man Jay Simmons, and they kind of decided on the award for the Blue Collar Award to be given to their entire offensive line. And that obviously shows how much they ran over Andrean in that first week, but they're obviously very successful. Usually that's an award we usually give to one player, but when you give it to a whole offensive unit, especially in a winning effort, they're obviously as real as it gets, and you need a solid offensive line and foundation to support this fantastic rushing attack, which, again, Cameron Jordan, he's a guy to look out for. That a lot of the hype coming into the season at the running back position for Merrillville was J.Q. Johnson, a 1,000-yard rusher last year, who's only a junior, seemed to be the next guy in line for in terms of Merrillville, great Merrillville running backs. And don't get me wrong, I think he still is, but Cameron Jordan's a nice 1-2 punch. Johnson, I want to say he went down kind of early in that Hobart game, and Cameron Jordan came in and did his work, had, I think, over 100 yards. He's now kind of creeping up into the top of those leaderboards as well, but he's a solid sophomore, and this is just another great Merrillville team. It kind of becomes that question of how far are they going to go when the time comes, but they're showing us another impressive week so far from the Pirates.
Yeah, and it should be a good one. We'll talk about the game coming up Friday here as well in a little bit. But, the Merrillville Pirates off to a strong, impressive start so far. On the other hand, the Hobart Brickies, not the start they were looking for at all.
No, I mean, again, it's a tough non-conference schedule. They've played Merrillville for X amount of years. I think this is Merrillville's 6th straight win over Hobart, and that's when they first started playing. I want to say that's the last of kind of their little rivalry week 2 they got going on. I want to say that's discontinued, but this was something that Merrillville kind of owned them in, and so Hobart hasn't started 2-0 since the 2018 season, so it's tough for them to kind of get on the right foot. They've had some talented teams since 2018, and they haven't really been able to get the season started in the right way, so it's not too much to panic yet, but again, I know they lost a lot of guys in the offense. They got to try and get that going. I was doing a little bit of research, and nine combined points in the first 2 games. I went back to 1994, and I didn't find any first 2 games of any of those seasons where they've scored that least amount of points. I think it's been pretty rough sledding for that kind of young Hobart offense, hoping to kind of get some production there. I know they got some guys defensively as well, but this is a team that is hoping to kind of grow. And again, once conference play rolls around, they play Munster, who's a team that's going to rebuild. Hopefully that's a chance to kind of get back on track for the Brickies. Yeah,
and Mike, while we're talking about it, we got a series coming out, and I want to let the audience know because we released the introduction to Beating the Brickies last week. And thank you all that read it and commented and liked and shared it. There was some commenting on there, Mike, about this team, this year's team.
Yeah.
And what we want to make it perfectly clear that we don't want any comparison. This is not some story we're putting out to compare then to now. We're simply talking about what it was, how it was back in the day. And we want to ask you guys, if you want to comment on this year's team, to please do it somewhere else. We don't think it's fair to this team or to Coach Eric Schreiber that they're getting compared to the glory years of Don Howell and all of that. And, we're starting the story in 78, Mike. Don Howell had been there 13 or 14 years building that program with Tom Kerr before they got into the run they were on. Eric Schreiber's in his first year taking over. So, again, we want to make sure everybody understands because there was a lot of people jumping on this, on this particular game and comparing the teams and all of that. And, again, we ask that you please don't. That's not at all the purpose of this series.
Yeah, 100%. This football is so much different back then. You and I kind of talked on previous episodes how different just the game of football was in Northwest Indiana, and we're not trying to bring a team down or lift a team up and just compare any. Again, we're going to highlight the great years of Hobart Brickies, but also, again, the teams that were fortunate enough to conquer them during that time. But this is not we're not trying to bring down this current Hobart Brickies squad. We know they're pretty solid, obviously. It's tough to compare.
It's
any
not a
team.
comparison. That's the thing.
Right,
it's not a comparison. You want to compare anything, it's the Hobart legacy is why region football is where it is today. They were the benchmark, and everybody had to get better because of Hobart. You want to beat Hobart, you got to get better because they're not coming down to your level. You got to get up to their level, and that's kind of what this series is, a thing of the past. And the past is just what it is. It's history.
Right.
So please do us a favor. We understand Hobart fans are, extremely passionate about their football team, and you guys want to win on Friday night. I get you. I love the Hobart football mystique and everything. All we ask is that you don't compare this year's team and this year's coaches to anything that we're talking about anytime that we recognize the greatness of the Hobart past, and certainly not with this. Beating the Brickies has nothing to do with this year. It's about celebrating teams that were able to do it when Hobart was nearly unbeatable.
Sure, 100%.
Okay, so that'll be coming up. We got the intro out, just so you know. A lot of you have read it. Coming up next week will be the Lake Central story, the Giant Killers. Lake Central stops the streak. That's one I'm writing as well. Then, Mike, you got a couple coming up as well.
I do.
And then there will be a handful to follow. I actually went and did a recount. There's actually a total of 8 stories along with the introduction.
Got it.
We thought it was 7, but I forgot about a game in there. So we'll try to release them, once a week or however we can. But, again, all we ask is that you enjoy them for what they are. And please don't use it as a comparison to anybody now who's in uniform for the Hobart Brickies. So, all right, Mike, one more game to look at here. 42-7, Crown Point gets the win over Arizona College Prep. I didn't know much about ACP other than they are called Arizona College Prep, and I took that to mean they're probably going to bring a pretty good football team, and they probably are a pretty good football team. Problem is they played a pretty great football team, and Crown Point did a number on them, 42-7.
Yeah, I mean, Crown Point, again, another fantastic performance. You could only say so much about them. I'd like to say the game was, at one point, I mean, the score didn't completely, I think, paint the full picture. Arizona College Prep, again, I think is still a very solid football squad, again, coached by Steve Vaught. That whole dynamic between him and Coach Buzz is the whole reason this game was even played. But there's a lot of kind of first game jitters. You gotta some factors you gotta look over for ACP. It was their first game of the season, which that's never easy. They had a lot of unforced errors that you typically would see maybe in a team's first game. They flew in the night before. That's never easy to play on different soil in a different time zone. But Crown Point, they still looked super fantastic. The offense was as great as they always could be. Again, Noah Ehrlich, 11 of 18, 3 total touchdowns. I want to say he had over 200 yards of offense. Larry Ellison, he just had some big plays. ACP was pretty solid against the inside run, but Larry Ellison, maybe he would get stuffed for a run or two, but then, out of nowhere, he'd bust one for 40 yards and a touchdown. He does it all. Again, he's one of the more exciting running backs I've ever had the chance to watch. He had 142 rushing yards, 2 total touchdowns. ACP only had 9 total yards rushing. So they did a pretty good job defensively, ACP did, but the offense, they couldn't really get anything going on that stout Crown Point defense. Again, only 9 total yards rushing, and now Crown Point now has the longest active regular season winning streak in the area, 20 games. It was previously Hanover Central, but they lost to Chittard in that kind of early called contest, but now Crown Point officially has that new record.
Well, congratulations to the Bulldogs on that. Certainly no easy accomplishment there.
No.
Last week the game was called a little early, Mike, and we didn't know why. We do have clarification now coming from Crown Point that they're telling us that the officials had called it due to lightning in the area. So we wondered about that, and that is the explanation.
Yeah, makes sense. I know there's some kind of harsh weather down in central Indiana, and Crown Point, where they're pretty decently south here in the region. So obviously, you kind of have that radius with the weather machines, they call them, and hey, they just thought game was kind of well decided. We'll go, hey, we'll call this one instead of wait 30 minutes and set this one out. So, but yeah, another impressive performance from the Bulldogs.
All right, you're watching Region Football Weekly. We are live in the Centier Bank studio. Zach Miller has the controls. He's Mike Dewan. I am Chris Ramirez. Thank you for joining us. We're going to take a quick timeout. Well, I don't know how quick it's going to be, but we're going to take a timeout. And when we come back, we'll take a look at the Home Improvement Top 10, sponsored by our friends at Gettysburg Exteriors. Mike, as always, a little bit of shakeup.
Yeah, of course. When won't there be in any week of region football? And we're excited to dive into it.
So we'll be right back with that and more here on Region Football Weekly on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
When life takes you places and you can't get to the store, shop online with Strack and Van Til to go. Our to-go service is easy to use, and it can save you time and money. Once your order is in, our own Strack and Van Til team preps your order with care. For delivery or pickup, enjoy the convenience of letting our to-go team shop for you. Enjoy your special moments. Sign up online today at shop.strackandvantil.com.
Hi, I'm Crown Company's Lantern Man. For years, I've helped your family and friends save on their car insurance. And now I've returned to rescue you from high prices. Whether you have a perfect driving record or a not-so-perfect record. Follow me to the Crowell Agency for immediate and affordable coverage. I'm your insurance superhero. Crowell Company's Insurance Professionals. Highland, Merrillville, and Michigan City.
Thinking about what to do after high school? Consider a career with Boilermakers Local 374. As a Boilermaker apprentice, you'll earn while you learn. We offer excellent wages and benefits, and as part of our no-cost hands-on apprenticeship program, you'll learn from the best in state-of-the-art training centers and on the job. Become a union Boilermaker and get on your way to a great career. Find out more, visit www.local374.org or call 219-845-1000.
Can't wait for summer, but dreading the heat because your old AC let you down? Don't sweat it out this summer. Call Economy Electric Heating and Cooling. The professionals there can fix you up. Install a central air unit that'll last for years. Your family deserves to stay comfortable. And with a 24/7 emergency service, comfort is just a phone call away. Give them a call at 219-923-4441 or check them out on the web at 4ajobdoneright.com.
Save for a healthy tomorrow with an HSA checking account from Tech Credit Union. It's a tax-advantaged way to save and pay for healthcare expenses. You'll enjoy no setup fee, no annual fee, and easy access to funds. Plus, you'll earn a better-than-competitive dividend rate, currently at 2.27% APY. Visit techcu.org, contact any branch, or call 800-276-8324 to learn more. Tech Credit Union is federally insured by the NCUA. Rates may change without notice.
We are back here in the Centier Bank studios. Chris Ramirez and Mike Dewan. Region Football Weekly is the show for week number 3. And we mentioned it earlier. I'll mention it every week, Mike. The season flies by fast. One of the reasons Football Fridays are so big, because you blink an eye, you're already mid-season. You blink another eye, you're late in season. So you got to enjoy these Friday nights as they happen.
Definitely cherish them, no matter if you're a player, if you're a parent, if you're a coach, because, yeah, like you said, it moves pretty quick. We definitely cherish them here at Region Sports Network. But, yeah, these games, I mean, before you know it, it comes October, the weather's going to be dipping like we're going to see tomorrow, and the football weather's right around the corner, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty. But, yeah, right now we're only, it's crazy to say we're a third of the way done.
Well, yeah, it's 20% of the entire season after this week, because it's 15 weeks of football, 15 games of football. There'll be 3 games out of the way as of Friday night.
Right.
So that's 20% of the season, and that's what we mean. It happens quick. We're going to cover as much of it as we can, and we hope you'll be along for the ride as often as possible. Mike, let's get to the Home Improvement Top 10 for Week 3. It is sponsored by our friends again at Enigenberg Exteriors. And speaking of the exterior, let's start with those on the outside looking in.
Sure thing.
We'll get right to it. There are 5 teams that we have listed. West Side, Boone Grove, Lake Central, Wheeler, and Morton. And where would you like to start on that list?
We could start with LC coming back into the bubble. Their first appearance in our list, they showed us a lot.
They lose their way into the bubble.
Yeah, right. It was a team that we kind of talked about last week, and if they were to give a pretty solid performance against a team up there in Michigan, Grand Rapids Central Catholic, this will kind of enhance our opinion on Lake Central. And it did just that, for sure. They went up there, they competed, and they beat a rebuilding Munster team in week 1, to say the least. But this was something that, again, a pretty solid performance from LC, and we got to put them in our bubble, and they have a chance. Again, it's going to be a good game against Portage this week with them, so that's going to be a fun one. But they showed us a lot last week. Yeah,
I was impressed by their performance as the scores were coming in as well. One team we're looking at that, we started off impressed with, that we're still looking for this team to find itself, is the Morton Governors.
Yeah, definitely. They're kind of hanging on the fringe of our bubble right now, kind of at the bottom of that list. And 0-2 start, not easy. A team, again, that's uber talented. It's just, can they put the pieces together? And I think, again, the non-conference start, playing 2 Duneland teams, there's kind of levels to this a little bit. Again, Morton, they showed us some promise last year, beating a Duneland team in Portage in the opener, but as we could see so far, this is a different Portage team. But I think the reason why Morton is still in this bubble is because, again, they're going to have a lot of non-conference games that are, I'd like to say, it might be an easier contest than the Dunelands that they faced in the first 2 weeks, but they're still the favorite in their conference, in my opinion, that small conference of 3 in the Great Lakes Athletic Conference. They got all the talent in the world. It's just, again, can they put the pieces together? And we're going to give them another week to hopefully show us. Again, that's going to be a tough contest for them, but they got to take a little bus ride for that non-conference matchup. But, there's a lot of faith in Morton. It's just, again, a lot of new faces, a lot of pieces that have to gel together.
Well, yeah, they got a lot of Saturday talent that needs to start showing itself on Friday night, and that's when they get that put together. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Let's see when that happens.
I'd like to say so.
All right, Mike, just one more team I want to ask you about with these 5 here. The Westside Cougars, top of the list here on the outside looking in.
Yeah, they've been kind of knocking on the door, to say the least. They very well probably could have been in the top 10 with a couple losses in front of them, but a couple good losses as well that just kind of keeps them on the outside. Still got plenty to show for us. Again, we know they're going to be a competitive team in the GSSC. They are the biggest team by class size in the GSSC, so they're going to compete. We just got to see one or two more things from them, I'd say, coming up in these next few weeks. They got a great quarterback in Giuseppe Moore. They got a lot of great guys on that team, and they always seem to be in the mix come October. They're a competitive team, and they're consistent as well. Coach Boz has a lot of good things going on over there, and they're going to be knocking on the door, but they just got to keep doing their job, and they can expect to crack this top 10 pretty soon.
Yeah, that's the home improvement top 10, the Enigenberg Exteriors home improvement top 10, and that's what we're going to get to next. At number 10, the Andrean 59ers, Mike. They come off a loss. I'm going to run down this real quick, and then we'll get back to a brief look at each team. Andrean comes in at 10. Chesterton is at number 9. The Griffith Panthers make their way in at number 8. River Forest at number 7. Portage at number 6, KV at number 5, the Big Four, Valpo number 4, Hanover number 3, Merrillville number 2, and no surprise, Crown Point coming in at number 1. Mike, where's the real shakeup here? Not much in the top 3, so take us through the rest.
Yeah, so we could kind of skip the top 2, Crown Point and Merrillville. We're going to talk about them a lot later on this show. First, the reasoning of Hanover and Valpo. I think that was kind of interesting, putting Hanover above Valpo. Hanover coming off a loss to Bishop Chatard last week, 28-7 in that early called game. And then Valpo, obviously, we talked about that comeback victory against Andrean. I think looking at both game scripts, kind of going into the game between those two teams, I think we were kind of expected Hanover to compete. But Bishop Chatard is Bishop Chatard, the best, one of the better football programs in the area. That's going to be a nice test for Hanover, but that's going to be some tough sledding for them. Now, Valpo, I like to say I kind of saw Andrean as a bounce-back game, which is kind of why we left Andrean on this list at 0-2. Valpo was a team that, although this isn't the same Andrean team as last year, they handled that Andrean team on Broadway last year. So this was, again, Valpo a few plays away from that game falling away, and they could be at the bottom of this list. So they still got some work to do. I think Hanover, I kind of like what their schedule's looking like come conference play. Again, a team that's going to be forced to reckon with in the NCC. Valpo, they're still going to be Valparaiso, which is why we still got to keep them in the top 5. But, yeah, that's kind of was the philosophy behind that switch. Then we moved up to KV. Again, they were 6th last week. They move on up because they beat a pretty solid Wheeler team. They're going to have a nice top 10 matchup this week as well. Portage moving up to 6th. Again, a comeback win. A Portage team, again, where we mentioned that culture. Who knows where that culture was last year in terms of coming back in games. When you're down at halftime, again, it's like you want to kind of chalk this one up. We don't know what a comeback victory is. It's been how long? And again, to start 2-0, first time since 2008, they're going to have a nice test this week. But Portage, they got a lot of guys on that team, and of course a great head coach, like you mentioned, in Roy Richards. River Forest, they keep doing their job. They're going to have a nice matchup this week that'll be on the Region Sports Network. They're beating good teams. That was a quality Calumet team that they beat 35-0. A team that's kind of on the come up. I know Coach Salary has his guys right, but again, Coach Hidalgo of River Forest, they got a lot of guys over there, and Aiden Silver is one of the more electrifying players in the area, which is why they move up on our list. But yeah, Griffith, 2 new entries, Griffith and Chesterton. Griffith was kind of one of those teams that after the first week, a pretty big win against Highland, and a lot of people were asking, hey, where's Griffith kind of knocking on the door? And then they go to Munster, which is a rebuilding team, but Munster is a much bigger school by enrollment. Again, a former NCC opponent, but Griffith, they handled them quite well. Another big victory, and 2 big victories, 2 shutouts in a row as well for Griffith. They're going to have a nice test against Hammond Central, but that's going to be a fun one nonetheless. Phil Mason, again, kind of going into that pivotal year. He's got these guys right playing the right brand of football, and those young Panthers from last year are officially growing up, getting ready to play some quality football, and they're going to be a force to reckon with in their respective division in the GSSC. Chesterton has shown they could run the football. They got 2 rushers so far that are over 300 yards on the ground. You don't see that much at all at any level in Chesterton. They are just a fantastic rushing attack. They beat a pretty solid Morton team. They handled them, again, in the trenches. A lot of good going on over there at Chesterton, team that I'd say they're pretty much a surprise as well. Didn't have a solid season last year, lost a lot of close games, but then the Doom, this is going to be a real big test to them. Once conference play rolls around, they're playing schools that are at or even bigger than their size. We're going to see how long they stay here, but right now we're putting them up in the 9th spot after 2 pretty solid wins against 2 respectable programs. And then Andrean, we kind of mentioned in that previous, talking about the previous game with Valparaiso. This was a team that I don't know if we expected to kind of be up 21-0 at one point. A smaller 2A school, again, that's maybe you can't really say that for their football program, but nonetheless, they got some guys over there, a lot of Saturday players, like you mentioned, and some of those are seniors, some of those guys are sophomores, juniors, whatever that may be. They got a lot of good guys over there, and again, once NCC rolls around, which it's doing this week, they got a nice top 10 matchup. They're going to be playing at KV. I think we can't put them in the bubble just yet. Andrean, again, 0-2 record, but you can't have a tougher start for your first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, well, what's going on with region football, Mike? 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, KV, Portage, River Forest, Griffith, and Chesterton. I don't think in the 20-some years we've been doing a top 10 that those 5 have all been in the top 10 at the same time. I would make you a large bet against that.
Yeah, I think I'll take your odds on that too, but it's, the playing field's kind of leveling out a little bit. We see a lot more talent kind of dispersed among these teams, and yeah, you got your top dogs, of course, that are going to run, the top of the list, but then that 5 through 10 range, that's where we're kind of trying to find some new names out here in KV. Again, all these teams are playing a good brand of football so far. And this is a long season nonetheless, but right now they proved us a lot so far, which is why they're in our list. But yeah, we're kind of seeing the level of the playing field of Northwest Indiana football. It's starting to kind of level out, and we got, as we mentioned, a lot of GSSC representation, a conference that was, minuscule, who knows how long ago, even some Great Lakes representation, as small as that conference is. And there's just a lot of talent across Northwest Indiana football, which is why this sport has really grown so much up here.
I couldn't agree more. I love to see some of these new team names in the top 10.
Yeah.
They've earned their way in. We don't put them in if we don't think they deserve.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
To see River Forest on the list,
Right.
Such a small program, kind of always in the background. You got to give a lot of credit to what Mark Hidalgo is doing. They haven't had a losing season since, 2018, something like that?
They find ways to be consistent. Again, they're trying to kind of take things a step further and do some damage in the playoffs, and especially kind of win their respective conference. But they're a solid team. They got a great quarterback, Aiden Silver, who's been behind center for, I want to say, 3 years. A defense that's ferocious with a head coach like Mark Hidalgo, who he was a fullback back in his day, I found out. So he's all about hitting people, being ferocious. That's a ferocious position, and he's got his guys playing football the right way. And again, they got a nice test against Wheeler, who, again, that's another team, the GSSC. They very well could be in this top 10 list. It's a battle to get in this list, to say the least. There's a lot of great teams. That's why we put a bubble, because it's tough to pick 10 teams that are most deserving. Because like you said, we're not putting these, maybe teams that are not typically in your top 10 because they never usually are. They deserve it.
That's not the reason they're in there. Exactly.
They deserve it. And these 10 teams and beyond, rightfully so.
And if we talk about River Forest before we go to break, Mike, you ever want to win a bet, go around and ask people what year River Forest went to the state football finals, and they'll argue with you until they're blue in the face that River Forest couldn't possibly ever went to the state finals.
Yeah.
So look that up. It can be done. That's the bottom line. It's been done already.
I'm going to look that up at the break. I didn't even know about that, so there we go.
There you go.
Teaching me some history.
Yep. All right, we're going to be back. That is the Enigenberg Home Improvement Top 10. We release it in a couple of different formats. Mike, you do a video reel earlier in the week that comes out, I believe, on Tuesdays.
Yeah,
is that right?
Our boy Zach Sinelli does the reels, so those release on our Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. I think just Facebook, Instagram, all our socials. And, we got the written article as well. You can find that written article on our website at regionsports.com. That kind of lists why the teams are here, who they played last week, maybe what was the reason why they won, and all the good stuff about that. So you could find the whole kind of breakdown of these rankings on our website. Again, that is regionsports.com.
All right, we'll be back with the previews for week number 3 after this timeout. We come back to the Centier Bank Studios here on Region Football Weekly. It's all a part of the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
Have you checked out Centier Bank's student checking account? This no-fee checking account is perfect for students and teens ages 14 to 24 and comes with all the features you need to succeed, such as a debit card, digital banking, and automatic deposit. Centier Bank can help you start establishing good spending habits today for your better tomorrow. For more information, visit Centier.com/student-checking or visit your local branch. If you are under the age of 18, your parent or guardian must also sign on the Centier student checking account. At the age of 25, your account will automatically convert to the Centier checking account. You must deposit $25 to open this account. This account is not eligible for overdraft advantage. Member FDIC.
Four Seasons Mechanical proudly serves Northwest Indiana, providing quality, reasonably priced, reliable service. With a quality and comfort guarantee, the professionals at Four Seasons Mechanical offer a wide range of services in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Whether it's residential or commercial, Four Seasons Mechanical is there 24/7. To find out more, the website is fourseasonsmechanical.com or give them a call at 219-756-7020. Four Seasons Mechanical, your indoor air quality specialist.
Earn while you learn from the best hands in the business. The Bricklayers Allied Craftworkers for Indiana, Kentucky Apprenticeship. That's right, this is a paid apprenticeship.
I'm getting an education while learning a trade and getting paid for it.
The thing that surprised me the most about this apprenticeship program is the respect I have received after the proper time and training.
Classes start soon, so apply now. There are training centers throughout Indiana and Kentucky. We are the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers for Indiana, Kentucky Apprenticeship. The best hands in the business.
Flip the switch, a light turns on. Press the button, machines and instruments come to life. Touch the screen, communicate with the world. Simple tasks, guaranteed results, every second of every day. That's the power of power. And that's the power brought to you by the NECA contractors and electrical workers of Local 531.
We love home internet from T-Mobile. Oh, now Mesh boosts Wi-Fi all over your home. Taking a class in your attic, that dead spot is gone. Stream ballet in your
glorious.
And now on the road you can take T-Mobile Wi-Fi with you. Hey, stay connected and watch what you'll do.
And we are back one more time from the Centier Bank Studios. Mike DeWan, yours truly, Chris Ramirez, Zach Miller hanging out over there. This is Region Football Weekly, heading into week number 3 of the season. We've been through last week's games. We've been through the top 10, Mike. Now it's time to take a look at some of the top games on the schedule for this week. And got a couple of them that involve top 10 teams going at it.
Yeah.
We'll start with number 10, Andrean, traveling down to the farm to take on number 5, KV.
KV has not beaten Andrean since 2012. They're looking at this game, you see number 5 KV, and we mentioned the parity of kind of Northwest Indiana football and seeing what KV's doing. A team that, you know, maybe could flirt with the top 10 in previous years, but this season they've really showed us a lot, and obviously they could run the football. Marco Castro's their guy, but this is an Andrean team that has had their way with the Cougars. KV, again, playing at home. It's never fun to take a bus ride out there no matter where you're from, and that's a fantastic facility they got out there. But that's going to be a great one. Again, I think it's going to be a pretty much a slugfest. This was a 24-8 win for Andrean last year, but this is, again, a team that Andrean, they like kind of starting their NCC with because they haven't had much to kind of, you know, cry over, you know, playing a KV team. They've had a lot of success over the better parts of a decade, and KV, they're looking to kind of rewrite history as they seem to kind of keep me doing with Kirk Kennedy at the helm.
Yeah, and again, we talked about it earlier. You know, Kirk Kennedy having a running back like Marco Castro, that is right up his alley. He knows what to do. Excuse me. He knows what to do when he gets that kind of talent, and we're seeing that now. So I'm going to need to take a drink, obviously. All right, Mike. River Forest, we've been talking about them. They're having a great season. They've got Wheeler coming in now to the Swamp. Should be a good ball game.
No doubt about it. 2 GSSC teams. That'll be on the Region Sports Network as well. That's going to be a super fun one. Again, 2 teams that are familiar with each other, and these are 2 teams that have pretty close affairs. 17-14 win for River Forest last year, and Wheeler, they're trying to kind of rewrite history. They don't want to start 0-3 again, although it was a fantastic kind of, you know, 2 periods of the season last year where it was a rough start in the non-conference and non-divisional games when they eventually, you know, rode the ship to 6 straight wins, but they're looking to kind of, you know, start that earlier and get a big win here against River Forest. But 2 solid teams. I say probably 2 of the better teams in the entire conference, both of them in separate divisions, but this is a great test for both squads leading into this game, and eventually, of course, the goal is to win your division, but you want to be the best team in the conference, and this could very well be the 2 best teams in the conference in each respective division. And yeah, a lot of two-way talent. That's what's fun about GSSC football, and we're excited again to be covering that game tomorrow over there at River Forest.
Yeah, I love two-way football. You see it a lot at the smaller schools. And yes, Mike, we are excited because, to my knowledge, and I've been around as long as anybody at Region Sports, I don't think we've ever video streamed a game from the Swamp at River Forest. Now, we have done a game, maybe even more than, I know a couple of times we've been there in the past for radio or internet audio, but I cannot recall a time that we were video streaming a game from there. So very excited to be going out there for the first time, and a great game to be doing.
Definitely want to check off the bucket list for sure. Again, we're expecting a pretty solid crowding and 2 teams that are familiar with each other, two solid squads in the GSSC. A lot of two-way talent, like you said. We're super excited again to feature that in the Region Sports Network. And like you said, yeah, that'll be a video broadcast, so you'll see all those players up close and personal.
Another game we'll have for you on video tomorrow. The LaPorte Slicers traveling to Viking Field. We do all Viking home games. If you're wondering why we do that, that is why. We love going to Viking Field. They're extremely hospitable to us there.
No kidding.
So Valparaiso and LaPorte going at it. Valparaiso 49-0 win last year. These appear to be 2 teams on opposite ends of the spectrum.
A little bit. LaPorte, again, is still a young team, still trying to figure out a lot of things. Head coach Austin Epple, again, in his first season, that he's not the interim head coach. He officially is the head coach of the Slicers, and they're a team that, again, they got some young pieces as well as some senior leadership. They're looking to kind of find their identity, and again, in a rebuild like this, it may take a season, it may take a half a season, but this is a tough tough but good test for the LaPorte Slicers to get them ready for, of course, the Duneland play, which is to come after this. Valparaiso, this is a team that, again, we were expecting a little bit maybe more last week, but in that second half they played about as perfect football as you can for the Valparaiso Vikings, and we're kind of maybe hoping to see that for Valparaiso, maybe all 4 quarters, but they want to try and get their offense going, whether that's through the air or on the ground, and then the defense that is always looking to get better. A lot of new faces on the defensive side, and this is a game that nonetheless is going to be a great experience for both teams. LaPorte, again, as you mentioned, 2 different ends of the spectrum. LaPorte trying to build that culture and get the players out there and perform on Friday nights, while Valparaiso, they're trying to find their new identity as well, because this is kind of a new era of Valparaiso football where a lot of those players from that state championship team in the 2022 season, now they're off and gone. They're doing bigger and better things, and now we got a new wave of Valparaiso Vikings hoping to kind of follow suit. So it's going to be a fun one. Again, we're always happy to be at Valparaiso High School.
Speaking of a fun one, Mike, we've saved what could be the best for last. We don't know. We'll see how it turns out. But it's not often we get a local 1-2 matchup going on. But this also has state 1-2 rankings involved. If you look at the statewide rankings in 6A, Crown Point is number 2. Merrillville is at number 1. Locally, Crown Point is number 1. Merrillville is number 2 in everyone's poll. It doesn't get any better than this, at least on paper. We'll see how the game turns out tomorrow. Last year it was similar in terms of rankings and things, and the game
the exact same.
Yeah, and the game didn't turn out quite that competitive. 39-6 in favor of Crown Point. We're going to see a closer game. Let's get to the meat of the matter on this, Mike. Here. What's it going to take for Merrillville this year? And by the way, the meat of the matter back again, courtesy of our friends at Better Beef of Indiana. We'll be telling you a lot more about them as the season goes on. But let's get to it. The meat of the matter on this one. Give me your breakdown here.
Yeah, so it is. This game being at Merrillville is a big plus for the Pirates. This game was at Crown Point last year, and again, as you kind of harped on, that game last year, 2 teams that came in with pretty high rankings. I want to say it was our 1v2 once again, a lot of Game of the Year aspirations for that game, but it was a 39-6 Crown Point victory. Crown Point has ran this conference 16 straight Duneland wins, including the playoffs, so they have been fantastic. But Merrillville, there's no place like home, as you'd say, and you have to. It's going to be a packed house. We're super excited to be there, but this was a stadium where they've won 12 straight games. Now the last time they lost, September 2nd of 2022, and that was the shootout against Crown Point, 48-40. So Crown Point, they have had their way against Merrillville. I want to say it's been 3 straight games that Crown Point has won, and Coach Bouzie, of course, always does a great job kind of figuring out, okay, these are the guys we got to beat because this is the standard in this conference. But Merrillville, I think the meat of the matter for them, of course, you gotta limit the unforced errors. I think that's can be said for both squads. You got to play a perfect brand of football, especially with these 2 top-ranked programs. But Merrillville, you have the advantage of walking out of school, getting ready for the game. You don't have to get on a bus ride, although it's a 20, 25-minute bus ride between the 2. It is nice to be on your home sideline, especially in a stadium like that. So you have to ride that momentum. I think the biggest matchup is that Crown Point defensive line, who's been fantastic so far, and that Merrillville senior-led offensive line. Again, the blue-collar guys from that Week 1 game against Andrean, they got a lot of guys up there that, again, allows to open up holes for J.Q. Johnson and Cameron Jordan. I think that's going to be the big matchup there in Crown Point. They got some guys on that D-line that are ferocious, and again, they held a great ACP team, Arizona College Prep, to 9 rushing yards. That's not easy to do. Mark Gonzalez is a name to look out for. He's a fantastic nose guard. Also, Joshua Miller's he's their leading tackler on that team. He's kind of the DN spot. He's got 3 sacks so far this year, so he's a name to look out for as well. And they got a stout defense nonetheless. So I think that's the biggest matchup, as well as, of course, we can look on the other side of the ball too. Crown Point offense is fantastic. Noah Ehrlich, he's the guy that really kind of mans it all for them. And the Merrillville defense, they always seem to be solid. So I think the meat of the matter, though, it's going to be just all in the trenches. Who's going to be able to run the football? Because, again, that's going to open up the passing game for these quarterbacks. Now, Noah Ehrlich, obviously, I'd say a pretty much more experienced quarterback behind center, while Merrillville, they're still trying to find their identity. I know they've played 2 guys so far throughout this season, still trying to kind of find the guy who's going to be there. But, again, the offensive line and defensive line, that's going to be the deciding factor of this game. And I think for Merrillville especially, they got to play to their home crowd. They got to ride that momentum because, again, against a Crown Point team who is now nationally ranked, you need all that you can get to play to play and potentially beat that team of Crown Point. So
no surprise, Mike, that, like you said, the meat of the matter in a game like this with two teams like this is going to come down to play in the trenches.
Yeah.
It's no surprise at all. It's exactly what I expected you to say, and we're going to see how that plays out tomorrow. But two great teams, 1 and 2, showing up on the same field. Just doesn't happen all that often. These are neighboring communities as well, and the way we do it, in Northwest Indiana, is we move north to south. So a lot of the people in Crown Point, I'm betting a lot of them went to high school in Merrillville. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Merrillville, they've got some of the former Merrillville coaches who were players at Merrillville on their staff as well. And that's, again, the first generation might have been up in Gary going to Edison or Emerson or Horseman or Wallace or wherever they went. The next generation moved south to Hobart and Merrillville. We're now in that generation. One of the reasons Crown Point is building and growing so much is, we continually move south generation by generation. So there's a lot in the mix here between these two teams going on. Zach Wells, the former head coach at Merrillville, was at Crown Point for all of those years. So it's really going to be, I hope it's going to be a great game, because certainly leading up to it, this is the kind of thing that football fans, football players, football coaches, us in the media, you look forward to games like this on the schedule. You kind of point these out almost a year ahead of time.
Yeah, we're happy to get this treat so early in the season. This, again, it sets both, although this might be seen as the Duneland Championship, nonetheless, this sets these teams up for the rest of the Duneland Conference. Now, obviously, whoever walks away from this game with a W is in the kind of the driver's seat. They might control their fate come the end of the season to win that Duneland crown. But this, again, prepares the guys, hopefully gets the guys healthy, get them ready to go for hopefully a long season, get ready in the Duneland Conference after this game as well, and then hopefully for a big-time playoff run. But this is as close as a playoff-like atmosphere you're going to get, especially this early in the season. So we're just happy to get this treat only in week 3. It's a long season, but this is a nice start so far. And, again, it arguably could be the game of the year. We hope it kind of stays that way because, again, there's a lot of talent on both sidelines, both sides, both teams. It's going to be a fun one for sure.
Yeah, and I expect a packed stadium, a full house at Demery tomorrow. And the last time I remember that happening, you have to go back to a Crown Point game, which was, I think, a sectional championship in 2005 to see the last time that there was not an empty seat available anywhere in Demery Stadium. We could see that this Friday night.
I mean, I could only... Again, my football history is not as broad as yours for sure, but I could only imagine what a packed house like that can do. I've seen it get pretty full, but maybe not to sold out levels. But that is a fantastic place to play. I fortunately had a chance to at least play on it at one point. That place, it's scary as in a way, but it's when you beat a team that is maybe home or whatever, that's on the home side at that stadium, that makes it also sweeter. So it's going to be a fun one. Again, Crown Point, they're going to bring they're going to bring their fans in Merrillville. Again, a game like this, the whole town's probably going to come out and check it out.
Yeah, all right, Mike, before we close out, I want to ask, you know what, I do want to get to the LC Portage game. I skipped over that. I apologize. We'll get back to that. But, all right, you mentioned something earlier, in the Crown Point Merrillville game. If you're a Merrillville player, your routine, your home routine and all of that. If you're a Crown Point player, you're getting on the bus. Kind of take us as a former player.
Yeah.
Take us from the school bell ringing at 2:30 or 2:40 or whenever it is. Last class is out. School's over for the day. It's Friday. You got the biggest football game of your life coming up. Kind of walk us through what a teenager's, going through and thinking at that point.
Yeah, school kind of goes out the window now. Any homework you're thinking about for the weekend, that could take a back seat maybe to Saturday or even Sunday. So being at home, again, it's nice. What I would like to do, again, get home, get a good meal, get off my feet, maybe just try and just lay down and kind of relax for a little bit, listen to some music, whatever, get kind of in that right mindset, get school basically off my mind and get ready for whatever team I'm facing. And then, again, being at home, again, you can kind of follow a routine where you could rest a little bit more. You can kind of get more comfy, get ready, get a good meal instead of hopping on a bus, which is, that's the benefit of playing at home. Now, luckily for Crown Point, this isn't a far bus ride. They don't have to go to LaPorte or anything, or they don't have to go to, somewhere down south or anywhere too far. So it benefits them, but you want things to be routine as possible. And again, it's a comfort thing being at home. So again, it's, for Merrillville, again, that's why it benefits them so much as a teenager. Again, you get to go home for a little bit, maybe go to the facility, again, start putting your pads on, stretch out, and do all that. For Crown Point, again, in an away game, you got to kind of get going. You got to, I got to be back at the school. I can't miss my bus, although it's not that far of a bus ride. Of course, we got to be on the bus. And then, it kind of throws off your routine a little bit. And it's, again, as a former player, I'd much rather have a home game than an away game, that's for sure. So
just the ability to kind of manage your time the way you want, basically, between the final bell and whenever it is Coach says, get back here to the stadium.
Yeah, as simple as it is. I mean, again, being at home, you just have more time to yourself. And that's sometimes just what you need. Again, get a good meal, get a stretch in, whatever.
Decompress a little, clear your mind.
You got to forget
get ready for some football.
Forget about that algebra homework you got over the weekend or whatever, and get ready to play some football. And again, it benefits Merrillville, I'd say, a lot. But Crown Point, they've played plenty of road games as well. I'm sure these kids are accustomed as well. So that's why it's going to make this game so much more fun. But that's why Merrillville, again, that meat of the matter, they got to ride having that advantage of walking out to school, walking out to the field, and getting ready to go.
And the meat of the matter, once again, returning this year. Thank you to our friends at Better Beef of Indiana. We'll have plenty to tell you about with them coming up throughout the year. Be sure to watch for our posts that we'll be sharing here coming up again. Better Beef of Indiana back with the Meat of the Matter sponsorship. Mike, one more game to look at, and we wanted to put this on the schedule. We just didn't have enough personnel this week. Great Duneland matchup, potentially. LC and Portage going at it at the Warpath.
Two teams that have a lot to prove. LC, again, a team that we mentioned is now on our bubble that they got in with the loss. They went up to Michigan and played a great non-conference team and hung in there. It was, I think, a one-score game, and it showed us a lot from Lake Central, and they're a team that, again, the Duneland, although it might be a little bit top-heavy with that big three, they're looking to kind of see who's going to creep in maybe to the mix. Again, maybe it may not be this year, but they need kind of teams that could potentially be in the middle and maybe upper echelon, like Portage as well, a team that they're playing, a team that LC, again, has had a lot of pretty success with. These are two classmates as well that they meet in that 6A sectional, and Portage, 3-0. I mean, that's hard to believe. Portage has a chance to do that, but they, again, playing at home, I'm very interested to see how that crowd turns out now. We're like, hey, we're 2-0, we're playing a Duneland team. This is going to be a fun one, but that's, again, two teams, a lot to prove. LC looking to kind of take back. This was a team that they've had a lot of. They did well against Portage. Again, this Portage was kind of maybe a bottom feeder in the Duneland, and LC, maybe in that lower tier, but they always kind of had their way against Portage. But this year, it seems to be different. And again, it's going to be a great one between those two 6A schools. But I'm very interested to see how that turnout for Portage will be now with the community and everyone. Again, when you see a team that's 2-0, that's been that long, a better half of a decade. It's going to be interesting to see how that community turns out for them.
Yeah, and I'm real interested to see what you were mentioning there earlier. The Duneland right now in the last few years, it's been the big three.
For sure.
Typically speaking, it's the top four and the bottom four. And, Michigan City was up there in that top four for a while. Lake Central under Brett St. Germain made its way in. Chesterton had a couple of good. There's somebody always seemingly rotating out of that fourth spot. That hasn't been the case. The top three have separated themselves in the last few years from the other five schools, and now we're looking to see who's going to find their way into that top four spot. And Portage and Lake Central both vying for it right now with this game here tomorrow.
But again, with the beauty with conference, everybody starts 0-0, so you have a chance to prove yourself, especially in this first game, and winning that first game in the conference, that puts you in the driver's seat. That makes things a little bit better as the season rolls around. But that's a pivotal game for kind of that fourth spot. Again, it might be tough to catch those big three, but this is a good start for two teams that could find themselves in the middle to upper pack in the Duneland come year's end.
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to do. The first order of business, if you're in that bottom half, is get up into the top half,
for sure.
And then fight everybody off below you. But there really are no weeks off in the Duneland Conference. You try to take one, you end up getting beat no matter who you're playing. It's one of the great things about that conference. And to me, I mean, I don't know. I don't see, some of the Central Indiana conferences play as often, obviously, but, it'd be hard pressed to find it. You'd be hard pressed to find a conference across the board as good as the Duneland in football.
Definitely.
On any given year, they're as good as anybody.
Especially this year. I mean, you look at our top 10, Chesterton creeping back in there. City I still think they could very well be a bubble team. They played Chesterton, so that's another game of that caliber to kind of look out for, like LC Portage, two teams that, again, they're 0-0 in the conference. Although Chesterton's 2-0 and City's 0-2, this is a game where, again, City, I believe they won last year pretty handily. Who knows how this one will go? That's going to be a fun one, but this conference is pretty deep, and again, you're going to have some teams that are looking to kind of rebuild. LaPorte, for example, but they're always going to be competitive. They've had some great years in the past, and I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of creep back in there in a few years in the Austin Epple era. But this is definitely the most competitive conference I'd say up here. And again, it makes this a whole lot more fun.
And
when these
LaPorte,
teams are
the
doing
10th
well.
anniversary of their state finals team. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since they got that team down there in the 5A state finals. But again, proving it can be done at schools like LaPorte. I mean, it can be done at any school. Anywhere, but certainly in the Duneland, when you're in a situation where, you know, they're suiting up 80, 90, 100 kids, some of these programs. I mean, you're going to find some talent in there. If you coach it up right, you got a good chance of going a long way in the tournament.
Yeah, it's you got to have the top coaches for the job, and you see a lot of these top coaches going through that conference. It's a full operation. It's not easy to do. It's a pretty big beast when you get to those 6A and 5A schools. When you have two jersey numbers for, you know, two different players, or the same jersey number for two players. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but that's a lot of kids you got to wrangle. It's the best of the best here in Northwest Indiana, and the biggest schools, you know, over here, and it's always a fun conference. But yeah, it's anybody could do it.
Yep, and it's good to see the numbers coming back. They were
sure.
dipping. I know we would go out to some of the summer stuff, and the coaches were telling us, you know, yeah, the numbers are down. The last few years, really, it's oddly enough, you know, since the end of COVID, we go out those last couple of seasons here, and it seems like the numbers are up all over the place. And I think that's one of the reasons, you know, that we're seeing the level of success as well. More kids in uniform.
Yeah, coaches, again, one of the big things, I mean, you got to keep kids within your program, but you got to trickle down to maybe the middle school, maybe even Pop Warner. Try and trickle down to those and say, hey, you know, this is the culture of our school, our football program. Here, come out to a game, see what you want to aspire to be on Friday nights. And these kids grow up, they live and breathe whatever school, you know, they're raised up in. And it's again, I'm happy to see the numbers as well, because football, again, it's you know, it always has a soft spot in my heart as well as probably yours.
It's my favorite sport, no
Exactly.
question about
You
it.
and me both.
You know, at the high school level, I mean, to me, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there's really no difference. You know, Friday football is high school is king, Saturday college, etc. You know, you look at what Crown Point is doing. To me, I look back and I say, okay, this is sort of Hobart repeating itself in the sense, as we talked about earlier. Hobart raised the bar for everybody in the region. Everybody started weightlifting. We're learning these things as we do this series. You know, that was Hobart. They were ahead of that. Well, now you look at what Crown Point is doing, and they're moving out. They're distancing themselves from a lot of the other programs in Northwest Indiana. What does that mean? Those teams, Crown Point's not going to back up for them. Those teams are going to have to catch up.
Sure.
And that's what we're going to see. So the bar is being set farther out ahead by Crown Point, which is going to bring everybody in the region closer to that level as they try to chase it. And I think that's going to bring up the quality of football across Northwest Indiana in the years ahead.
100%. You're always gunning for the top dog, whether that's in your conference or just, again, like...
And the higher the dog, the more you got to, you know, chase. So.
Right. I mean, if you're looking at it from conference to conference, Hanover Central's another team that is... They're doing pretty well. Now, maybe not they're hoping to get more playoff success, maybe similar to some of those teams we mentioned, but they're a team that they're now 4A. This was a program that started not too long ago, and they are talented as ever. And this is another team that is they're always doing well in the regular season. They're scheduling Bishop Chatard now, which is, I mean, that's something they couldn't say they could even dream of a few seasons ago. And this is a program as well that the standard of football is really changing, and it's kudos to them. But again, this is a team that has grown dramatically. Now, what are these other schools going to do to catch up, especially, you know, in that NCC, a conference of teams that ran that conference, and then Hanover goes in their year one, a conference where we didn't know if they'd stand the physicality of it, and they win that year one. So again, Crown Point, Hanover, they're kind of those teams that are, again, they're resetting the bar, and who's going to be there to catch them? But it's
going to be the question.
Well, we love the chase, though. We love it.
Absolutely. We got games for you Friday night, 3 of them for you, as always. It kicks off early with the Tech Tailgate Show. 3 games to follow. We'll have Zach with a Hose Connections halftime report. We'll follow it all up with the region football wrap-up, Mike.
Let's have some fun, just like that. Let's get to another night of football. Let's decompress now, but just like that, it'll be Friday night, and we'll be ready to have a show for you.
All right, that's going to do it, everybody, for our Week 3 edition of Region Football Weekly. 20% of them are in the books already, Mike. How about that?
Crazy to believe.
3 down, 12 more to go. But we will be back Friday, as I said, with plenty of action. So we look forward to seeing you here on the Region Sports Network if you're not out at a game somewhere. For my broadcast partner tonight, Mike Dewan, for Zach Miller behind the controls, I'm Chris Ramirez. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been a production of the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.